welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined by Matt and Shad. Matt is in the Larry Zavisca. He is in the control
Yeah.
booth, getting ready to host worldwide there.
The new world odor. Yes.
Um, I just lost my train of thought because you just made me think of like the Bruno and
I
Larry.
love the Bruno
Cage
shirt.
match.
Yeah.
Bruno San
Yeah.
Martino.
Oh, good choice for the week. Not someone that'll be on our show this week. So this week we are doing we're doing wrestlers that ruined their legacy, but I think we kind of subconsciously avoided people with like criminal activity. So like you're probably not going to see Tammy Lynn Sitch, Benoit's not going to be on there.
We could do an entire show. I mean, we've talked about stuff. People have talked endlessly. I mean, the whole kind of existence of Dark Side of the Ring essentially covers some of that criminal behavior. It's kind of shame. Look, I've been a wrestling fan now for like 30 something years. It's kind of shameful, right?
Yeah.
so many individuals in the hobby that we love. Because it's not like even like the NFL. Like the NFL has had a lot of problems, especially like the last few years. Like the NFL has been around for decades and it's massive.
They've done a pretty good
okay,
job
maybe
of
there's some
cleaning themselves up, though. Like it's not like even like the 2000s where like you were getting like you had guys like biting police officers on the leg and stuff. Who did that? No, it was a security guard. I think you don't get like stuff like that quite as much anymore. But Dark Side of the Ring, though, sometimes I feel like they take something and really sensationalize it a bit more than it should.
Sometimes.
I haven't watched any of this most recent season, but I think it's ongoing right now. But they have kind of I feel like they've run out of topics. It's like, let's take this mildly controversial thing and do a whole episode on it. And it's like
when they were doing like FMW, I'm like, you guys are really starting to scrape the barrel, aren't you?
I mean, I don't really know enough about FMW, but I don't recall there being this like huge amount of controversy.
It's known as like an indie sleaze promotion, but I mean
it was definitely sleaze, but I mean,
yeah. But we watched the Onita Funk exploding ring match, and I mean they really like the whole point of that match was to stay out of the barbed wire, so it wasn't even that bloody of a match for like a barbed wire exploding ring match. Which I still like the ending of that though, where Onita like valiantly like crawls on top of Funk to protect him from the exploding ring. That was some great theatrics. But
absolutely.
I think what we're kind of I think devoting this to is more like in ring, like guys that stay too long. There's definitely going to be someone on here I think that ruined their legacy with their in ring performance, and then like things like maybe being a sex pest, which will be our first one.
Not being able to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah, lying, racism, clowning themselves to grift. And you're going to see me drinking out a red Solo cup. This is just not alcohol. It's Diet Cola because I needed ice. And they're cheap at Aldi.
This is terms of service.
This is not
tea.
This is not alcohol.
This is not iced tea.
This is water. So
this is water with bubbles.
Is that Aldi brand?
Actually, it is. Yes.
I get the I get the black cherry flavored? Of that.
This is the cherry limeade. I also like the key lime.
I get the black cherry.
Oh, I've gotten that too.
I don't feel like I can do seltzers. Like I just
those are good.
This doesn't taste like a seltzer.
Yeah, it's not bitter.
This is a 0 calorie. It's sparkling water, but
it's just carbonated water.
Yeah,
I don't buy this, but if I'm at like a party, like a barbecue or something, like at someone's house or something, and someone has like, they have like, the LaCroix, like a LaCroix, like one of those flavors. Like, yeah, I'll drink that. It's fine, but
I
don't really like it. The only kind of like that I like is the San Pellegrino, but that's like part fruit juice, so it's that actually tastes like an actual beverage.
I've tried LaCroix a couple of times, and I've come to the conclusion that LaCroix tastes like grapefruit sweat.
Yeah,
and not like sweat on a grapefruit. But if I ate enough grapefruit for it to mix with my sweat and then put it in cans, that's what LaCroix tastes like to me. I just can't.
LaCroix basically is like, take a fruit and then have someone who's never tasted it tell you what it actually thinks like it should taste like, and then that's the taste of LaCroix.
LaCroix is one of those.
I've never had a lime, but I think this is what it tastes like.
LaCroix is kind of like one of those. I don't want to say lifestyle brand, but it's one of those like identity brands. Like if you see some guy on a stream or something drinking LaCroix, like you immediately like have an idea of like what they're
sending a message.
Yeah. I only shop at Whole Foods.
Only at Whole Foods. I buy the organic.
I put my
farmer market doesn't have it.
I put my pinky up when I drink my tea.
This is the kind of guy that intentionally hits that P in raspberries. Really, they're organic raspberries.
Yes. You know? So before we hit this, I do want to send a shout out because he's been a big supporter of us from pretty close to day one. He has a YouTube channel, Beefy Bites. He does a lot of unboxing of like Pokemon cards. I think he does Final Fantasy and some other ones, and he does some toys. I know he does like a lot of the TMNT toys, both the classics and the new ones, which honestly the classics are pretty tempting because they're only $10 and they're the originals. I think he might do
Are those the ones, pardon me, are those the ones that you can get at like Target?
I think so. I see them at Meijer.
Oh, okay. I mean, there's no Meijer near me, but I think, like they've been putting out consistently. Essentially, they look to be the exact molds.
Yep.
And then I know that Super 7 is putting out a bunch of stuff, but Super 7 usually is like overpriced to all hell.
Horribly.
But NECA, NECA, has been putting out a bunch of stuff, and the quality, you can actually get a lot of their stuff at like Target too, but the quality of their stuff, I don't know.
You have to go to like the adult toy section, not the toy section.
I've occasionally seen it,
but you don't go too far into the adult toy section because it turns into something else.
That gets scary real quick. When you start seeing whips turn around.
Adult toy. Yeah. The quality of the NECA stuff looks pretty good, and they're like, it's more almost what I would call like esoteric. It's like, here's this character that was in like one issue of the original comic series. Yeah. And it's like, wow.
He said,
but it's cool.
He says the OG molds.
Yeah.
Because I was tempted because they had at Meijer, I saw Wingnut and Screw Loose, which I was like, oh, I remember having that one because I had like all of them back in the day. I even had like the Technodrome. That was like the one series I had like everything of, and like the vehicles, because even like G.I. Joe, I had like one or two vehicles.
Oh, I had a few. There's like 3 toy lines I can think of that I actually, for whatever reason, like I went deep in because I liked it or my whatever. It was Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the day when I was really little, like He-Man. I had most of those figures. I had most of the Turtles too, except like the later ones. And G.I. Joe, like
I still can smell the slime for He-Man.
I know what you're talking about. I never had the slime fit.
Did you?
But like
you could get it like, because you could get I think Ghostbusters had the slime too.
It was the same type of like there's way different slime because my daughter's like obsessed with slime.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it picks up every like piece of hair and like paper and like leaves a film on your hand and stuff.
Yeah, Chad, I don't know if your kids play with slime, but it got to the point where we designated slime outfit for my oldest daughter because after she ruined at least like 2 sets of clothes with just slime that does not come out. No. And it's far different from the 80s slime where you could just do whatever with it, and it was fine. Now it's like super sticky. It gets in everything. Like I don't like it.
So we do stuff with slime as little as possible here. But then the other thing, the only one that I peaked early because the only set that I had most stuff for was actually the Super Friends, because I had the Hall of Justice and I had the carriers for stuff and I had the figures. Yes. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice, I had the Superman plane. The Wonder Woman had a walker for some reason.
Shouldn't
like
have
you
the
just
invisible...
put her in there.
They're missing out on a chance to sell you nothing for like $30.
But here's the thing. They started making that in the similar vein again, and there is an invisible plane. But at the time, it wasn't the invisible plane. It was the Wonder Walker, which was basically the bubble off of an old helicopter. You know, those bubble helicopters. Except instead of having a rotor blade and a tail, it just had legs on the bottom. You'd wind it up and it go.
I used to hate that. I used to hate that as a kid when like they felt they would do something like they do a superhero something or other, and then they would like feel the need to do accessories or vehicles, and you would get something that like had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. I had the Batmobile that had the claw that would pop out of the back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen those. I've been tempted to get them. I have not. But you know who's making those? Is McFarlane. Like Todd McFarlane's company is actually making that, and the molds are like pretty much exactly. But there's new stuff because he's even made figures that weren't part of the original line, like the Peacemaker series on Max, HBO Max, with John Cena. Like he's made a couple of characters from that. It's interesting. Like if I didn't, I still collect like wrestling figures and like a G.I. Joe Classified, but it's like I have no space for like do more than that. So I'm not doing more than that. I'm not gonna do like a whole toy line. But I've seen those; they're really cool.
For my kids, I had gotten them the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Darkseid. Now they've got Nightwing and Deathstroke. Like they've got a bunch of those things, and they're like add-on Christmas or birthday gift stuff. They're not the primary gift, but they're just kind of a little add-on, so it feels. Like
they're only 10. Beefy popped in and said that, but they're only at 10, which makes them appealing too. So
yeah,
I'm going to start us off. I would say with the king of legacy ruining or ruination, because he's kind of done it all. He's ruined it in ring, behavior, kind of like just not going away. So all hail the goat of ruining is Ric Flair.
Oh God,
because he's done it all. Like he's wrestled and looked like absolute crap. He does too many interviews and too many podcasts. He just had the incident at Paisanos, which I kind of had to laugh about, because if you were an Opie and Anthony listener way back in the day, that was one of their like big advertisers. Matt will remember that.
Mm-hmm. Is it a different? It's like a specific type of restaurant, because there's like a Paisanos Pizza down here, which is like a pizza chain.
Well, I think he did it in New York, so I was thinking it was probably Paisanos.
Yeah,
I don't know. That was just embarrassing.
The thing that kills me about that particular incident is he pitched a fit about it. He said, "No, this didn't happen. They kicked me out when they didn't mean to. I spent $1,500 there because it was a graduation party." And then they're like, "Yeah, you were being drunk and belligerent. And by the way, here's the security cam footage." And it's like, oh. Yeah. And then Flair still kept going with that line. He's like, "No, we're gonna pursue legal action." It's like, dude, maybe
no,
not.
He's a man in his 70s who has gotten away with pulling this probably a lot of times.
Who still has the mentality of a 16-year-old.
Yes, but probably was able, obviously before the days of like social media and everything. Yeah, think it's not like he doesn't think that it's like 2024. He's thinking back to like the 80s, where he could somehow like put these guys on blast, and it really hurt them. Now it's like, oh, this is what you're saying we did? Like, okay, like we can immediately refute that. Here's video footage that we're going to release. It's like, yeah, you can't, like, that's not going to work, Rick, but.
No, good luck with that one.
And I would say he's by far the worst. Well, Yeah, I'll say he's the worst signing AEW's made, even worse than Punk. Because at least Punk like did something for the company for a while.
It's so one of the biggest things that bugs me, the AEW signing. It's just kind of like,
It made them
but
look bad, like because they had a pretty good record of not compromising with their signings, and I felt like that was a bit of a moral compromise that made them look bad. And he really didn't add anything.
it's supposedly, if I remember correctly, his Woo energy drink was paying for his contract. Like advertising the energy drink with him was paying for his contract with him. But the thing that really, really bugs me about Flair ruining his legacy was the whole Ric Flair's final match. And look, Flair is such a carny that it's hard to believe most of what comes out of his mouth.
Hey, look, I'll have you know, Kiss has promised me like 8 times that this is the last one.
But he did he came out and said he did an interview a little while back, and he was like, my doctor was asking me if I had passed out at any point recently because I attacked, and he was like, yeah, I passed out during that last match I had. So that was parlayed into Ric Flair now had a heart attack during his last match, that tag match he had, and I'm like, okay, first of all,
You're not the Ram, Ric Flair.
That I don't know a lot of medical stuff. I don't know how exactly a doctor can say, hey, you had a heart attack in the last 6 months, year, something like that.
It's happened to some friends of mine. They've gone in and they've been like, hey, one of them was like, hey, I'm having like trouble feeling my feet. And they're like, oh, you've had like 4 heart attacks.
Oh, okay.
And
so
it happened to a great relative of mine where, and this is like in like the 20s or something, like she had gone in and they're like, oh, you've had like 6 heart attacks. I think she was having fatigue issues or something. Like it happens. Like I know more than one person that's had some issue and they've been like, oh, no, you know who else it happened to, Matt? It happened to Fez.
Mm. Oh yeah. Yeah. They're testing, medical testing, is pretty remarkable nowadays. So there are tests that the cardiac tests that can be performed, which can show evidence of essentially what they call they show evidence of a prior what they call myocardial infarction, which is the fancy medical term for saying a heart attack.
Yeah.
And I mean, back in the day, I mean, obviously there are people who die of heart attacks because you get into some sort of cardiac emergency and you don't get appropriate treatment. But a lot of people can have heart attacks and like they have chest pain or some other symptoms, but it's like they're not going to keel over. Like it kind of resolves in the sense that
it's especially bad with women because they are much less likely to have symptoms.
The classic symptoms.
Yeah.
Like heart attacks. From when I was a Red Cross first aid CPR trainer, that was one of the things that was told to us was part of the training is heart attacks present differently in different people. It depends on the nature of what the heart attack is. Some of them have the classic, how's your arm feel? Don't know, can't feel it. Like there's the classic kind. And then there's the ones where they just kind of feel bad and then they feel like something bad's going to happen to them and that sort of stuff. But they can present in so many different ways. And it just seems to me that the doctor's saying, if you've passed out at all in the past year, that's when you had a heart attack. And I'm like, I'm guessing. You could say that's probably when, but this is Flair talking.
I'm guessing they can tell by the rhythm of your heart and like the electrical output of your body if there's something wrong.
They'd have to run like a battery test to see because I mean, if every time someone passes out, it doesn't mean a heart attack.
No.
There could be multiple different medical reasons for that. But you can get with cardiac things, you can get what they call syncope, which is basically like pass out. And that's because like there's issues with blood pressure. There's issues with sometimes. I mean, my dad, towards the end of it, like the later years of his life, he started having hypotension, which is when your blood pressure gets too low. And you get too low, you can pass out, which hypertension, hypotension. That's obviously cardiac related, but it's not a heart attack. But that can cause you to pass out. There's many different reasons, but yeah, like they can do testing and they could see something.
Can we discuss the elephant in the room with this story though? It's Ric Flair, who's a raging alcoholic. Passing out is like Tuesday to him.
Yeah, and he did this during that last match, which he faked having a heart attack to start with. And
hey, he's just doing the nitro.
The whole thing, I couldn't bring myself to watch the whole thing. I've seen clips out of it, and it looks awful. It just, for who Flair was in the ring, it just looks so terrible.
He's looked bad.
That's the last thing he did.
He hasn't looked good in like 20 years. Like even Hogan in more recent like times has looked better in the ring, because we'll do it on the show at some point. It's one of the Slammiversaries. Him and Sting have a match, and Hogan really can't bump, and it's remarkably good because they just work around it. Because like for everything about Hogan, he's still like smart as a worker. So they just like they just worked around it. Like when Flair tries to do like the Flair stuff, and he's too old. Because remember he had that one match in Impact with Sting, and he like fucked his arm up real bad. Like he blew out like a bursa sac in his arm or something.
Ooh. We'll get to Hogan. I've being kind of like a seasoned pro wrestling fan. You come like to a circle. You start off, and you're younger, being like, oh man, Hulk Hogan's great. I love Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania. And then you become a little more experienced and you're like, Hogan sucks. Like, shitty worker. Like, he's not as good as like Benoit or whatever. Insert now something that makes you very awkward to have said back in the day. But then you come around again. I've come around again and you're like, Hogan actually was like a tremendous worker. He's actually one of the best workers of all time.
He's a great worker. He just happens to be a complete and utter shithead.
Yeah.
So, we'll but still on Flair, the story being very publicly made through Dark Side of the Ring, oddly enough, Plane Ride from Hell, and other stuff, like all that stuff coming up. It's like, wow.
You know what still pisses me off about that is it just shows how stupid the internet is with their canceling shit. Is the only person that got any lasting ramifications of that was Tommy Dreamer. Like the person that actually sexually assaulted someone did not get anything done to them by the internet, but Tommy Dreamer, who had one bad take. It's just so emblematic of like how Twitter works.
It's weird because, and maybe this is just a gut feeling, but they go, Ric Flair did this, and Ric Flair did this, aren't you outraged? And it felt like a whole bunch of the internet went, I mean, yeah, it's Flair. It ain't the first time.
No.
So,
I mean, I'm not. That's really bad, and I think that did damage his legacy. But I mean, like,
I think it did. It changed like my view of him. Honestly, it's not that I was like completely like blinders on to how Ric Flair was kind of like
No, but he had a pattern of. I think where I was different on that is I remembered it, and I was always shocked people kind of let it go. But like the decade leading up to that, he had like a pattern of just embarrassing behavior where a lot of us were just like, oh, just go away. Like when he scammed Ring of Honor out of like 50 grand or whatever. And then he tried the same thing on TNA and they were like, no, we're not doing that. And he got all mad at them.
There was a story about him having the original NWA title that he like basically gave to High Spots as collateral for a loan and then defaulted on. And so I think Triple H bought it to buy off the debt and have the old NWA title in his office, I think, something like that. But, things like that all the time. There was a D'Lo Brown shoot that I watched, and he said, I don't understand Ric Flair. He said, if I'd had 1 year in the business like Ric Flair did, I'd never have to work again. But Ric Flair is broke. It's like, well...
Rick in the 80s was pulling in insane money for that time. I mean, you have to adjust for cost inflation, but I mean, the dude was making like 6 figures back in the 80s, which was probably in today's, I mean, obviously guys get paid at least the top level guys get paid in today's age. But I mean, he was the top level guy. He was like the NWA champion multiple times. He was the main guy, and he was pulling in was probably like
300
if he
grand
was
a
pulling in
year.
100,000. Yeah, if he was pulling in $100,000, it was more like the equivalent of like $300,000, $400,000,
I bet
$500,000.
Meltzer knows.
Hang on, I'm actually looking up an
You know
inflation
what I think the
calculator
worst
right
part
now.
about the Ric Flair stuff is though. Could you imagine how awful it's got to be Charlotte, and just have to wonder like every time?
She's kind of an odd one to me, and I say that because I don't. If you actually watch, and I know that I watched it and discussed it with our buddy Tim, way back in the day, and on his one of his streaming shows.
Oh yeah,
Like
Tim's very disappointed in Flair. That was what I took away from that
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah,
we watched like that documentary they did like decade ago, or more ago. It's old because Charlotte wasn't even in wrestling.
Was it the ESPN one?
It might have been
the 30 for 30.
It's the one that focused. Yeah, I think it might have. It's the one that focused very heavily on like kind of what happened after Reed died. And Reed, I think we can, for all like Flair's behavior, I mean, he's always been kind of, he's always had like excessive behavior, but really like after Reed died, it seems like that the wheels came off. Like that, I think was like he's never, in my opinion, he's never recovered like that completely.
Yeah.
No.
Whatever you think of Ric Flair, like that as a person, it seems to have completely broke him. But based upon that,
people are not psychologically built to bury their children. Like that's just a sad fact. And we've seen, I mean, there's been quite a few people that have never recovered from their kids dying. Like there's some people I've known in real life, like their kid died and they were just like, it's been years, like I think even like over a decade for one, and they're still like a shadow person.
Yeah. That is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my worst fears, one of my worst nightmares.
Like when Nash
by the
was
way,
talking about it, when everyone like freaked out, and he was just talking about, because it's not comparable, but he went on that rant like within close to when my dog had passed away, and he was going on like you wake up and they're not there and stuff. I'm like, oh fuck, like that's like I totally know like what, like that wake up and you realize like they're gone, like it's just like that was the one where everyone freaked out because he was just being Nash. Like I think it was a joke, but
that was just how he was coping. Yeah.
I mean, well, people have postulated specifically with Nash that he's still grieving. He's still dealing with bereavement.
Oh, I don't think he's
putting on a show. He's trying to pay the bills, but he's very deeply depressed. And how can you not be?
I would say, in all seriousness, I'm not throwing any shade at everyone. I think that man is going to grieve like a motherfucker until the day he dies over it. Because I think the way he died though, like if I was in Nash's shoes, man, you got to think about how much like shade he's throwing at himself about it too. Like that's where I think the insidious part of that one is, because it's like, man, could I have done anything? Like, was there some sign? Like, what if I'd been here? Instead, like that. I think there's just like
what ifs.
Yeah, and I seriously, I hope and pray that man is going to a therapist, because I would not want to be in those shoes. That's just got to be just brutally terrible.
Yeah.
Brad, I don't. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, especially with his best friend dying, kind of.
Yeah, that's
a really similar way.
I didn't hear specifically what Nash had said, Brad, but I think about like when my parents died and it's been years at this point since my parents died, but what I tried to tell people, like and maybe this kind of goes along with what he's saying. It's like, imagine like there's something in your life that is always there. Like there's like a tree in the front yard or something stupid. It's like, it's just always there. And then you like wake up one morning and now it's gone. And it's like, that's your brain really struggles to compute it's like that. Wait, that's not right.
Yeah,
And
what's even
basically
worse.
like it's a hole in your existence. It's a hole in your existence, and you can see it all the time. Maybe it's in your peripheral, but it's there and it doesn't go away. And your mind has to try and rationalize, like, why is there a hole there? There shouldn't be a hole there. And you have to learn to live with the hole because it doesn't get filled. It's just there.
And it's even worse. Like she needed a lot of care her last year or so, and so then when you're doing all that caregiving and everything is so centered around them, like not only are they gone, but then you have like with her, like I think she'd been gone like 2 days, and it was like 8:30 when I was supposed to do her pills and everything, and there's like a whole process to it and everything. I was just sitting there like, I don't know what to fucking do with myself.
Yeah.
Because that was like so much like a part of your life. Because I think that probably happens to a lot of people whose parents dies that they're caregiving for. Like it makes the void even worse because so much of your being was like
it is emotional injury. And I'm going to be honest with you. It seems to me, at least in America, that we need to, it's changing a little bit, but we have got to let men have some latitude to deal with that sort of thing, because it's contributing to the fact that men in North America for a long time have been emotionally killing themselves, which unfortunately leads to them killing themselves.
You know what pisses me off is like all of the pearl clutching about like the manosphere and like red pillars and stuff, and then it's like the absolute refusal to like analyze why those people are being drawn to like that bullshit. And it's like, well, like you like it is a symptom of a bigger problem that you need to like figure out if you want to get rid of them, which you should. But like there is a specific reason that those people are getting traction right now, and you need to address those problems. And a lot of it is because like you are not like
they're feeling unheard and unvalued.
Yeah. And then you let charlatans come in because they feign like those things.
There was I know we're getting kind of far afield, so I'll make my point and then quit, but there was an article I read a little while back about this, that they said that we're going to trace this back to the veterans from World War I, because they go off to the war and they can't really talk about it. They come back, and we didn't know what PTSD was then. They were in shell shock, but they come home and they're just spoke their way and they don't know what to do with it, so they self-medicate. And then you go from that.
Don't forget like getting chemical weaponed.
Well, I'm kind of speaking in general because not everybody got gassed, but you go from that into the Great Depression. What happens there? Same kind of thing. You go from the Great Depression into World War II, and then you have even more people who are going through that process. But here's the thing. Now the cycle's established, and they won't talk about it, and they don't know how to deal with it, and they self-medicate. And it's just kind of now that we're kind of looking around going, we should be doing something about this, because this isn't healthy.
They're doing a little more on therapy, but like I've got some friends from like Iraq and Afghanistan that have issues that they don't do a fucking thing for them really. Because I mean, I don't know if this is an indelicate way of doing it, but they're pretty much just discarded toys now, so no one gives a flying rat's ass about it.
It is important to me because of my job and who I deal with, that I spend it actually. I steal a big chunk of curriculum time to talk about adult clinical depression and stuff. And I saw this great video that somebody said once, and it was this question. It said, what is the most manly thing you can say? And it was this dude who, to make the point, he was decked out in furs and like Viking face paint on, and he had a big axe on his shoulder. And it's, what's the most manly thing someone can say? And he turns and looks at the camera and goes, I need help. And I'm just like, I'm on board with you. I'm there. But all of that to go back to, Flair losing Reed. And remember, Reed was the one that Flair ditched Nitro for to go watch Reed's wrestling tournament. Like, for all of his faults, Flair really seemed to care about his kids, and Reed was, I think, regarded as being the most promising one to follow in Dad's footsteps, and so
I would probably qualify that. He seems to care about some of his kids. Not that he didn't care about his kids like in general, but I mean, if you listen to some of even some of these documentaries, it's like he oftentimes wasn't there, and part of that's just like that's the nature of the business. Like you're frequently traveling, but I also like I think his oldest daughter and Charlotte and David, I don't know that he was there or there that often for them, and I think there was a lot of infidelity between him and
I would say
their mother and everything.
I would say a lot.
But he did seem to be close to Reed. Like, I mean, that was part of the documentary, was that essentially best friends. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the business and Reed's antics maybe kind of contributed to Reed's own substance abuse issues. But to cycle it back to Charlotte, or Ashley Flair, this is before she even got into wrestling. The documentary kind of did, without focusing or trying to make that narrative, it did seem that she even got into the business was because Reed died, and she felt this need or pressure to basically continue the Flair wrestling family name and get into wrestling. But in the last few years, like, she's taken like large stretches of time away from wrestling. Now, part of that is because she's been injured.
Well, I mean,
yeah, she's been injured.
I also question her implant exploding. I imagine there was a lot of psychological trauma to that one.
Yeah, there was that. Obviously, not that a few months ago she like tore ACL. Like, you're looking at like a year on the shelf just for that.
She had a shoulder. She had another pretty bad one.
She's had some injuries.
But
yeah, she's had some injuries. But
she's what, like 39 now?
She's in her late 30s, I think. I don't know that she's that old. She might be, but she's definitely older. So it's like, I don't know how much longer you're going to do this anyway, just because, like, especially for women, not trying to be, but you know, genderist or whatever, but any wrestler, once you start hitting 40, like, there's probably not a lot left in the tank. I know this is a business where, you know, Sting just retired in the early 60s, in his early 60s, but he's like a
massive outlier
abnormality.
And I mean, Charlotte is like
and Chris Jericho and other people, like even people in like New Japan, like Minoru Suzuki, like there are people who can wrestle into their 50s, but I don't know, like a lot of women who are older still do it. I mean, there's some Joshi workers that do it. Like Aja Kong, older.
I consider part of, especially for Charlotte, is she got into it comparatively late in her life. Like, she got into it much later on.
But she was like a personal trainer and stuff, so she had probably been putting a lot of wear and tear on her body.
Yeah. And as Arn Anderson once put it, he said, you've got to build the callus of your body to go do this stuff. And part of the reason that they like having people start early is because basically you adapt to it better. You know, I started later on too, and I seemed to accumulate wear and tear faster than other people. So
I think when you're
Charlotte getting into it late.
I think when you're young and dumb and like you're doing it wrong at like 21, like you aren't putting the same damage on yourself as if you were like 28 or 29. But I think Mickie James is a bit older now too, isn't she?
I think she's like in her early to mid 40s. And I'm not saying like they can't, but it's obviously like the older any individual, male or female, the older
style is not a good.
The older you get, like the less you're going to be able to go, or the less you're going to actually be able to do in the ring.
Yeah.
But to cycle it all back to Rick, I find, especially like the most recent Paisanos incident, it's kind of unfortunate because he is, I think, a very bad alcoholic, and you would have thought, you would have hoped that would have changed a few years back when the man almost died, and he essentially like somehow miraculously survived, because if it was going on, I think it was like some sort of like bowel issue. But if you listen to Meltzer, like he was basically making it seem like, he was like potentially hours away from death, but he somehow survived. And you would think like, well, I got a new lease on life. I'm gonna
Oh, I totally forgot about
things.
that.
He didn't. He didn't. He's raging alcoholic, but to me, I think you're right. Like he has kind of across the board really kind of like embarrassed himself. And he, in my opinion, he's done because Ric Flair, I still think is one of the best workers of all time. And
Yeah.
I've historically loved Rick, but I've really
He needs to go
kind of
away. Is the
soured on him.
problem.
That's what I was about to say. Like he made kind of like I'll say cardinal rule. He failed the cardinal rule, but it's basically we can't miss you if you don't go away. Like nostalgia works so strongly, but it really works if you don't. You need to go away.
Yeah.
This is like a sidebar, but I'm making a point here, but at least online, like on Twitter, on social media, like a lot of people were really in the last few months strongly anti Chris Jericho. And a part of that is just the insinuation of sexual misconduct on his part, even though there's nothing that has been very strongly fleshed out about that.
He walked it back and said he made it up, so we can discard those as not happening.
Yeah, but some people running with that, obviously, and they have an agenda against Jericho. Which seems to me, and we're not wading into these waters, but it seems to me a lot of people don't, at least on certain corners of social media, don't like him because of what they perceive to be his politics. I don't know about his personal politics. I don't care because I focus on his actual like.
He's like work. He's kind of just like, I think. So we're kind of like an era if you're like just like to stir the pot a bit and explore things, maybe some offbeat topics, or just like to throw things out there. People don't like that now, and that gets you like immediately like labeled as like a bad person with wrongthink. And I think that's what he does. And like supposedly like his wife is like something or other, but I mean,
his wife I think is supposed to be like really right wing, which like, I don't know. I don't.
Who cares? He is one of the most
people really. Yeah, people seem to like. I don't know how you have so much free time that all you can do is patrol like the Twitter likes or whatever.
Because you have no fucking life.
The
like,
wife of a wrestler. Grass. It's like, but I think people have something of an agenda against him because of that.
Well,
in some circles,
it's fucking stupid though. Like, he's on the road a lot, but like, there's only so much responsibility you have for your spouse. Like at the end of the day, they are like their own person. Yes, like it's like you don't fucking lock the wife of a serial killer up. Like this guilt by association stuff's so stupid. And even if he is right wing, like look at all the stuff he donates to. Like when the guy on the Buffalo Bills had that heart issue on the field, Chris Jericho donated $5,000 and misspelled his name by accident, so he just donated another $5,000 to
and he's done things before where he's like I remember like he very strongly was coming out in favor of like Nyla Rose and people being very transphobic, and it's like it's not really a very right-wing ideology or position to be very trans friendly, but he's obviously defending a coworker who's trans. But I'm not talking specifically about Chris Jericho's potential politics more than people are against him. They didn't want him to do it. I was kind of like, I'm okay with Chris Jericho going away for a while, and the reason why is because he's been constant in AEW for like 5 years.
Yeah,
and it's like, dude, you got stale. Like, you should go away again. But this is the reason why Chris Jericho is like on my list of greatest of all time. He came up with this like learning tree gimmick, and it's like, oh god damn it, Chris Jericho, you've done it again. I'm now amused. I'm liking it. And there are people online, the same people who are like, the people who are like, oh fuck Chris Jericho, go away. They are like, oh god damn it, Chris, you made me like you again.
I have seen that exact line of thinking happen in Reddit.
Let's
damn it, like Jericho. What I was making, just to finish my point, the point I was making is that Flair, because all he has is the spotlight. That's the only thing that imbues, or the only thing that adds any sort of validity to his life. Won't go away.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you need to go away because there's been a lot of bad stuff, and you never going away just keeps it at the forefront.
And
So if he were to be like, guys, and like disappear for 5 years, I think the feelings would die down a bit.
Well, look, it did a lot for Dusty when Dusty went away and did like the NXT stuff. But I wanted to say Chris Jericho also kind of as a contrast to Flair. Look what happened when he had health issues due to the booze. Dropped all that weight, went clean. Like look at the change that made in his wrestling ability and stuff. Like complete like counterbalance to Flair.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's grab another person who we can go with the legacy ruining thing. Who's next on the list?
I'm gonna do the podcast wing here because there's a couple of things I want to say about both of them, but also contrast why one's a much larger clown than the other one. So this would be I'm only gonna give Eric Bischoff the grifter title, and then Jim Cornette. Because the one thing I'm going to say, I'll just say it off the top. So, Eric Bischoff's a clown. He's a one-hit wonder. The only thing anyone wants to fucking hear from him is, like, about WCW for, like, a year and a half. The only time, like, he even, like, made it sort of work. And even then, like, half the stuff is just Conrad reading Meltzer stuff. Because Bischoff's useless. And, just the stabbing Meltzer in the back when Meltzer really did like him a lot of solids back in the day. And why I say he's a clown and a grifter more than Jim Cornette is, so if Jim Cornette wants to talk wrestling history, like I'm still willing to sidle up and listen because he has a lot of good insight. Like I think he's playing a lot of things up, but also like Cornette like does have like valid criticisms at times, and I think he's also he's not necessarily like other vets in that he doesn't mindlessly hate on new wrestling. Like he does, like he has like criticisms of it, but he's a little more like open to it than other people. And I don't feel like he's grifting as much as anything. Well, he's grifting advertisers, but like, I don't know, Bischoff just comes across as like a disingenuous like grifter. And he has like no real value to add like as a voice, whereas Jim Cornette has like if you want like good stuff from him still, go like find his deep dives on like when he was booking OVW or like Smoky Mountain. Like his insights and like his note keeping is great. Like that's the one thing I will say about Jim Cornette is if Jim Cornette says something that he was involved in, it's true because he's sitting there reading it off a piece of paper because he like obnoxiously
he wrote everything down. Yeah. But the thing that bugs, so Bischoff seems to just clown on stuff that's going to get him rage engagement.
Yeah.
And I mean they're just bad. The credit that I will give to Bischoff is that he, from everything that I can recollect, guy was good. He was a good TV producer and got Nitro going and all that sort. It's like, okay, credit where it's due. You did that well, but I'm not giving you credit for being a great wrestling mind.
He did some stuff. I will say Nitro was a little also revolutionary in that it was giving away like good matches, and I think he really, and this is the last nice thing I'll say, is I think he really either intentionally or unintentionally stumbled into hey, I have this promotion with these guys you remember from the 80s at the top. Hey, here's some work rate guys. Hey, here's some hardcore stuff. Like he really mastered that, but I don't know if that was intentional.
Bringing the 3-ring circus and bringing luchadors to national wrestling television. Like, okay, I don't know for certain that was him or not, but I'd be willing to give him credit on that. But I'm not giving him credit for being.
Like, I think that people overlook that. They try to discredit people that like, oh well, they just like didn't say no. It's like sometimes that's a big deal.
Just let them go and do stuff. That's sometimes all you need.
Because you don't think there weren't a bunch of racist like wrestling guys in like '95 that'd be like, you're gonna let a bunch of masked Mexicans on your TV?
Like, here, let me use a Hogan line. Hogan was of the opinion those cruiserweights can cruiserweight, brother. It's like, that does seem like a hell of a thing for. That was the reason some people tuned into their show at all.
Yeah.
The thing that bugs me about Cornette is I feel like Cornette's actually, for modern stuff, it feels like he's being really disingenuous to cater to a particular crowd. And he has to keep going further down that line, and it becomes a less and less and less good look as he goes. But keeps going because that's what's
there. I've said this before. I've said it like on our Twitter. I don't cut Cornette any breaks because there are people who defended him, and it's like, well, he's just doing like a bit, and it's like, if you're consistently really toxic because that's the audience you're catering to, at some point it's like, it's not a bit, or I don't care that it's a bit. You're actively catering and putting out points and talking about stuff, and you're encouraging the toxicity. And you're doing it because it'll get you clicks, and the clicks will generate revenue.
I've said it on the show.
That's the case
numerous times. Like, I truly think like being an actual racist is not as bad as playing one for money.
I think they're both bad in different ways.
Yeah, but I find one for money to be extra distasteful for some reason.
It's because it's all, I don't know how to phrase it. I don't know that it would be more distasteful. It's like less. It's somehow less respectful.
Because
and
they have
less respect.
I think for me it's because they have a monetary incentive to never change, whereas someone that's like actually racist, like you might be able to talk to them. They might have like a positive experience with someone. Like there's potential that their opinion could change due to external circumstances, whereas someone that's playing one for money, as long as the money's coming in, they're not going to change because they're not incentivized for it.
Well, how about here? Let me use like an example. How many times have we kind of talked about Cowboy Bill Watts on the program? It's like, that's a guy who many people have said, it's like, oh yeah, Bill Watts is racist. And maybe he is. Like, or maybe he historically has been racist, but we also have a lot of African Americans who said, like, yeah, we're for Bill Watts. Like, I got like the best pay I've ever got.
Yeah, Kamala speaks very highly.
Kamala, Bill Watts, didn't he back in the day make like JYD like his main star?
Well, he made Ernie Ladd his booker.
Ernie Ladd, yeah,
and that he got a lot of blowback.
Ron Simmons, yeah, he
got a lot of blowback for Ernie Ladd as his booker, because here's the other thing. Yeah. Here's the other thing, and we just talked about this last week, but like he embraced like having such a largely black audience, and even into like WCW in into the 90s, they were like having executives come in the front rows to hide how black their audience was. I think even into the Bischoff days, they were doing stuff like that. They were trying to chase those fans away or ignore them. And I mean, I think you still see it sometimes now. I mean, look at WWE now. Look at them and their very ethnocentric stabling right now.
That I feel that's a Paul creation.
Yeah, because it lets him keep them, because he's not creative enough, but it lets him keep them kind of together so he doesn't have to like do anything. But like you look at it, it's like, why are all the Mexican guys like together? Why are all the Asian people together? Why, and that's what I hated on Twitter though, is when they're like, oh, we need this Asian women's table. It's like, they're not even from the same country. Yeah. And honestly, like the people from China still don't like people from Japan over what happened in World War II.
And the last, like, yesterday I saw somebody, maybe like Fightful or someone, reported that I guess Mark Henry's AEW contract is running out, and someone commented, it's like, oh man, yeah, like he should go back to WWE and he should manage like Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and it's like, I know you're trolling with this shit. Like, don't tell me that this black guy going to be high. You want this black guy to return to the WWE and immediately start just associating with the other black talent.
Yeah,
like come on.
No, but like when Tony,
you have to be trolling.
Like when Tony Atlas was managing him, yeah, they were of the same ethnicity, but they were both strong men. Like
there was actually, there was actually like a logical reason for that.
If you want to bring him in as like Jade Cargill's coach or Bianca's coach, like yeah, you can sell me on that because it'd be like, oh yeah, the big strong guy's coming in to like.
I'm gonna teach you more strength training so you are more strong. That I can get that.
They wouldn't go that route.
But
like that would make.
But you see, arm like fuck it, chuck it guy, but like I hate that in sports because they always do that. They always want to compare. It's like no, they are like this person, but like their brains like break. It drives me insane.
This is like a weird like tangent point, but it's like looking at comics. It's like Christopher Priest. It's like, hey, I want to write for you guys. Like, what book do you want to put me on? So we have this black character. And he's like, no, I don't need to write a black character just because I'm a black man. Like,
that's how
I'm a writer. I can write anyone.
That's
so
how DC. That's how DC got.
Gave him Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deathstroke, a white character. Phenomenal job because he's a good writer.
Well, he said
you don't have to pigeonhole someone.
He said, I think the direct quote was like, "I'm a writer. Like I can write anyone."
Yeah, and he's right. He's a good writer.
Because that's what I don't understand a lot of stuff. It's like there's basic things that are like human condition.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a really funny SNL skit I just saw with that, which was it was Black Jeopardy with Tom Hanks playing like this like white trash guy. And they're like doubting him being on there, and like the whole point of the joke is like the rest of like the people on Black Jeopardy and him have like and he have like all this stuff in common because like they come from like the same place of class in life, and so like they're all like
essentially the same socioeconomic status.
Yeah. Wow. Like and they're like the best one was like one of the categories was like was it big girls or was it big women? I don't remember.
No, it was skinny girls, and it was skinny girls can do this for you, and he buzzes in and says, "No, what is not a damn thing?"
Yeah, and he's like, "My wife is a sturdy woman." No, I think it was big girls, but the problem is, I want to say it's big women because have you ever heard the Charles Barkley like San Antonio rant, like where he's like, "They got big women in San Antonio." Oh. Because it's Barkley being Barkley.
Yeah.
Anyway,
back to Bischoff and corny, I guess.
Well, cycle it back. Like I'm with you. Like, you can respect. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but you can respect an actual racist more than a guy who's just grifting for it.
I think there's potential. There's potential to change their mind is why I think it's not as bad because like I said, they could have positive interactions with people. You could talk to them because like I think there's a difference too of just plain ignorance can play a role in that too. Yeah. And like I just think like you can change someone's mind. Like I can't think of his name. Daryl Rucker, who used to get guys out of the KKK.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where I think like it's not as bad. I think it was Darius Rucker maybe.
No, Darius Rucker was Hootie the Blowfish.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was on a Joe Rogan talking about it, and like so but like I think we're, and I have no, I would say my disappointment with Cornette is more than Bischoff because Cornette has like stuff to offer as far as like a historical account.
So
I don't give Cornette, to finish my thought on Cornette, I don't give him a pass because he's consistently made like transphobic comments. He consistently like has inspired a ton of hate towards like Joshi workers, including like Riho.
Yeah.
He constantly makes essentially homophobic remarks about people like Kenny Omega. And look, Kenny Omega has always played close to his vest about his sexual orientation.
And
Not that I care or it matters.
Who cares?
But Cornette obviously likes to insinuate
one caveat:
certain things.
If Kenny Omega is a furry, we will have to call him out for such deviant behavior.
I'd be very disappointed.
I
love Kenny, but I'd be disappointed.
Well, and then the only thing that would be worse than if he was a furry is if he's a brony. Then like he just has to be eliminated.
That is.
He doesn't talk about it. I'm not sure he is
one. He's making all those comments, and even he also flirts with racism too, because that apparently what his audience likes. Because I don't know if you saw this. This was like kind of controversial in the last like couple weeks. Last month I'll say, but Swerve wins the AEW title, and Cornette does an episode talking about that, or one of Swerve's performances in the couple weeks after winning the title of Dynasty. And the little picture he has for his like little YouTube show talking about it, it's Cornette, and it's also Swerve, and there is a gorilla.
Cornette's a gorilla.
And a fucking.
I could ask.
Like maybe Cornette, but it's like a gorilla and a fucking cotton swab. You're gonna put a gorilla and like a Q-tip cotton swab next to a little caricature of a black man.
I don't know the context.
Fuck you're doing. It's 2024.
I don't know the context. I do know the artist, so I could ask about that.
We know like putting a black man next to a gorilla, two things that are, very associated, and using like racial epithets and everything towards African Americans. Like we know, like what you're doing. Like you're not fucking clever or smart. We know what you're doing.
Well, there's
you're sending out. People love to use this word or this like, but it's a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle. It's a wink and a nod. Like,
there's video of him.
Look, we're throwing a gorilla and a cotton swab next to a black guy. Wink, wink. It's like, go fuck yourself. Like, this is the shit that you're pulling.
There's video of him using the N-word, like back in the day. Like, you don't.
Oh yeah.
You don't use that. Like I said, like my grandparents, who were born in the 10s and the 20s, like, maybe had some un-PC words for that, but like if you use that kind of language, they would have smacked the shit out of you.
Yeah, they did not.
And I'm talking about like in the 80s, like they would have smacked the shit out of you because that was not like cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
as for Bischoff, I probably have a less flattering view of Bischoff than even you do, Brad. But it's really listening to people like Meltzer who would know. Even talking on like very old, like years old episodes of like the Laughs Fan, where they would go through like the old Starcades and stuff like that, and listening to them talk to Dave Meltzer about everything like that. And it really does seem like, outside of some conventions maybe that he did help instill or innovate, like Nitro, whatever. But it really does seem like you really fucking lucked into the NWO angle and that catching fire, because
he lucked into
you otherwise really screwed the pooch on this. You took a company that reached its heights with the NWO, and let's say like it, obviously began in mid 1996. Literally within 5 years, company was dead, sold for a pittance to the main rival. Less money on the purchase of that and its library than he spent running his sex trafficking to one of his victims. Like he spent more money, hush money, on just one of his numerous victims in his sex trafficking crimes over the course of
he might have
however many decades.
I think part of the problem is he didn't pay all of it, so he might not have. But I was gonna say, it wasn't even the NWO. Like they tripped over Ric Flair and Randy Savage getting people interested in the product in like late 95 and early 96, but
that was after completely screwing up Hogan Flair. They had a Hogan Flair series where Hogan won every match.
Well,
And
remember
the company,
they went from that
like
to him wrestling Brutus Beefcake.
the promotion that for like over a decade was the Ric Flair promotion. They had the guy who was the symbol of the other company come in and just beat him every time. And it's like, well, you wonder why people don't care.
Yeah.
And it took Savage and Flair having this like really good feud.
Well, Savage
bring
was
people
more,
back.
I would say, and it helped because Savage was, I'd say, more of like a WCW, NWA guy.
I mean, yes and no. Like, I think he was
in the ability to work
representative.
Department, he was more of there.
Yes. He almost like he could it seemed like he could code or he could move into the whole like Southern style, like
he had that,
and he had that intensity that really worked.
That
like
grittier personality and character. And I've always
Savage
wondered.
Was a great worker too. People sleep on Savage. Savage was a great worker.
I always wonder what would have happened if he did jump ship for real in '89. Like, I wonder what that would have done to well, if he would have jumped and if Jim Herd hadn't have lowballed Piper, I wonder what like that would have looked like. They would have screwed it up, but
it could have been really, really good. The problem with like late 80s, early 90s NWA, WCW is that they went through like so much turnover and turmoil with terms of like who was actually running the company.
I know.
That they ran. I mean, it's a whole separate discussion. We could talk like they do a whole show talking about that. But I mean, I feel like I love Sting. Sting's probably my favorite of all time. That's a guy who like from the very beginning like didn't necessarily get the run that he needed to or be established early on like he should have as the ace, because there was so much turmoil going on at the time that they didn't give him the right opponents. They didn't push him the right way. But how can you do that when it's like every 6 months or a year, new guys running things, new booker, new management? It's like it was a mess. But yeah, that's a whole interesting thought experiment. What if Savage or Piper jumped ship?
You know what would have been funny if Ric Flair had asked to see the manager at Paisanos, and like a hooded figure comes out and rips the hood off, and it's Jim Herd. It's like, it was me, Flair. It was me all the time.
It's me all along.
I was gonna get you with pizza. So who's somebody else we want to?
Jim Barnett rises from the grave.
My boy.
My boy.
So I'm gonna
do this. I quit.
I'm gonna go with strictly in ring. So we're gonna go with Shane McMahon, who at one point was the most liked McMahon, and then did his like return thing to the point where we were all happy when he like tore his quads. No, he tore his. Did he tear his Achilles? At one point, I just know the most liked McMahon to probably being less liked than Stephanie.
Maybe, but I mean, he arguably might be somehow the least problematic McMahon.
Yeah, but
because I think if you actually read between the lines, I've read a lot about McMahon family in the last like year or so, last few months, and it actually does seem, if you read between the lines and some of the stuff that's been put out there, that doesn't really get hyped up, but I almost kind of feel like Shane knew some of the stuff that was going on with him and his dad, and he maybe wasn't necessarily down with it, and that's kind of what led to like Shane being on the outs and falling out with Vince. Like,
I think that's kind of. I kind of wonder
distancing himself from it.
I kind of wonder if that's why.
Maybe.
I kind of wonder if that's why Stephanie was like fired / came back. Vince came back. She immediately quit and has never come back. Like I kind of wonder if both of his children are on the outs with him for the same reason.
Oh, I mean, well, they certainly are now, because there was a report that came that I guess it's last Christmas. Cue friend of the show Chris DiPetrillo Wham song reference last Christmas, but allegedly Vince like spent it with like his personal trainer, like no family. Like his kids don't talk to him, like his Stephanie and
it's
Paul won't let him see the grandkids.
So, what's sad is like the Trish Stratus angle where like, you know, they had Linda like drugged and stuff ended up being like how his WWE career ended for real.
Yeah.
I think with Shane
Brad.
though, it's like it's the fact that he was fairly well regarded, even as a worker. Even though like I always thought like what he did was bullshit through his whole career, because he would do all this crazy stuff that he only had to do like a couple times a year, and it wasn't fair to the other workers. But then he came back and he was just like burying guys, pissed everyone off with the Royal Rumble, essentially got fired. He just kind of tanked, like, I think people's perception of him is like a performer. And his matches sucked. Like
his matches always sucked.
Yeah.
I looked it up. He did tear his quad. He's
he did it in the
years old.
He did it in the. Did he do it in the Daniel Bryan return match?
No, he did it like a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, maybe.
Oh no, the Daniel Bryan match was just he did all the match and everyone was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Shane is 54, and I think the reason why people are like hating on his in ring is because like he came back when he's like 50, and he's like, I mean, he's a guy. It's like he respect to him back in the day for actually. I get what you're saying. Like he'd let me go and do spots, take all the spotlight. When guys who were doing it, 5 nights a week, were busting their ass, like they're getting less positions. But it's like, well, that's the Booker's son. And he did, put himself out there and do more than other people. It was nepotism, obviously, but it also wasn't as terrible as it could have been. That said, he did come back, and it's like he's kind of like presented as like a dominant guy, and it's like,
yeah,
I don't know if you should be, and you certainly shouldn't be like 50. And for a while, it became almost like a meme on social media. But it was like every time he'd wrestle a match, and it could be like a 5-minute match, he'd be all like super red face, and it's like, dude, you look like you're gonna have a heart attack.
Yeah,
like don't die in the ring. But he also looked jacked. It's like, are you going on?
He may not have done cardio much too.
Are you well? You look pretty well. You're like, you got more muscles than me. Like I got.
Yeah. One of the things that, at least personally, has always been a pain in the ass for me about Shane McMahon is, I mean, first his work looks like crap. And the problem with that is, like, especially, he throws his punches look bad on television, but apparently they're stiff as hell too. So they're the worst combination, because he's just hitting you and it doesn't look good. So it's like, well, then getting peppered isn't even, Austin would, whenever Austin got going, his working punches would start laying it in. And it's like, well, okay, because they look good, because Austin had like full motion, and like he'd hook his punches so you'd see him and stuff, and Shane's just like, I'm punching you, and it's just, stiffen the hell out of people in the face. And then the Rumble was so bad that it was a mess everywhere, and there were rumblings, well, whackety schmackety, I made a pun. There was rumors floating around that stuff was getting changed out from under him all the way in the lead up to it. But he sure kept his sequence in there, didn't he?
He booked that whole Rumble with the get his shit in attitude.
Yeah, well, yeah. That was the one thing that he made sure to do and not push back on the others.
I tend to not believe that part, because the only thing in that entire Rumble that had any attention to detail were the things that involved him.
I loved, there was I think it was that Rumble.
Oh, where Orton made him go out?
Yeah, where his music hit, and he's like, "You're next," and Orton went, "I'm sure shit not going out to your music. Get out there."
He was like, "You better get your ass out there, because I'm not going out to Here Comes the Money."
Yeah. So,
are you big licking me?
I do find myself hoping that Orton has matured a lot.
He seems like he has. Time. Like he hasn't done anything for a long time. Like a lot of the really bad, like I've said before in defense of him, if I had all that money and like fame when I was like 22, I would have probably been a dick too. So, and he hasn't done anything. He seems like one of those dudes that like having a kid like mellowed him out a ton. And there's like the story about that kid he met through like Call of Duty, and they still like play together and stuff. And like, he seems like he's matured a lot.
But I mean, we're setting, as for legacy tarnishing, we're setting Vince aside because that whole thing's still in process.
And that we've talked about that this year, and that one's just like a really brutal topic to.
Awful, yeah. So we're not digging into that right now.
And it's criminal, so.
So I had a handful of legacy ruinings that I thought would be of kind of an amusing take, as opposed to how some of these have been super heavy. And one of them is because of how deranged it is in the time post WCW career, but pre that one time around Mania when they figured they'd bring him back and name something after him and try and clean up his image with Ultimate Warrior. Holy crap.
Oh, I have his you should have told me earlier. I would have dug the comic out because I have his comic book here.
Oh God.
Because it
this scrunk.
It threatened to kill my family if I threw it away, so it's still in the house.
Because
he does tie up, and I believe
it's insinuated.
Assault Santa Claus in a very inappropriate manner.
The one that really got me is there was footage around somewhere. He was doing a motivational speech presentation or something at like a school. And he straight up used the line, and this is a quote, "Queering don't make the world work."
Oh, I forgot.
And went went like down the road on it, and you're like, are we serious? And yep.
You said Warrior, and I was like, there was some really homophobic thing he said, and I couldn't remember it. And then you said it, and I was like, oh my God.
Didn't he say like queering don't make the world go round or something?
Queering don't make the world work. Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck is that? What does that mean? God.
I don't know.
But he did that, and it was so weird. And then when they brought him back to put him in the Hall of Fame and do all that, I'm like, you guys made a whole 2 DVD set dumping on this guy. And now you're going for image rehab. Well, this is weird. And then here's someone who didn't have a legacy to leave and yet still managed to find a way to ruin it. And that's
I would say it was a weird confluence of events, but like the way he did that like final speech and then like died 2 days later kind of did add to like his lore in like an interesting way. But I mean, I do agree because he was into some weird political stuff.
Warrior University and Distrucity and like all this weird.
Yeah.
Distrucity.
Yeah. For, like I said, for a guy who did not have a legacy to tarnish and yet somehow still pulled it off.
No, there was
Disco
something.
Inferno.
There was so he's a clown. I will say people call him a bad worker, which is not true. Because when you're talking about his early gimmick, I've always said like to feign incompetence in the ring, you have to actually be pretty good as a wrestler because you have to thwart the tropes of a wrestler. So you actually have to be fairly confident to do those things.
And like Disco,
and he got a good match out of Conan.
Solid. Yeah, he was solid.
The only good match that I've ever seen out of Conan.
Yeah, because
I would even call it great.
It was perfectly acceptable wrestling.
I don't even know if I consider the Paraguayo cage match that we reviewed.
It was half of a good match. I thought the Paraguayo parts were good. And Conan did take a pretty nasty bump in that.
I did not enjoy that match.
But I will say this is him as a worker. I thought his timing was good. I thought he had a pretty good offense for the most part.
He had figured out that thing that we give Kenny Omega credit for. He had a regular offense that wasn't complicated and worked on everybody, so he could string it together with anybody short of like Paul White.
Yeah, and I do give him credit because he did like take the cigarette out of Paul White's mouth and say, "Hey, don't you know that'll stunt your growth?"
Stunt your growth.
Yeah, but like he was. I would go on out on the limb and say he was a good, stable worker. That if Disco Inferno, if we were running a promotion and Disco Inferno turned up and said, "Hey, can I wrestle on your show?" We'd be like, "Fuck yeah!" Like we'll get you in there because you know what you're getting with him.
And then Disco Inferno went on to being the guy to, god awful takes.
I think the appropriate term for what Disco is now is a lol cow.
This is the guy that had what may have been the hardest Twitter burial I have ever seen. When Cody Rhodes, and I pulled it up to make sure I get the verbiage right, Cody Rhodes responded to Disco, "Stop. You know nothing. You have drawn $0. No fan has ever left a show thinking about you. You are lucky to be a juiced-up double lifer over with the boys type in an era where you hid in plain sight, coasting on others' success. Couldn't hang then, can't get booked now." It's like, oh my god.
You know who else Cody called out and was prophetic about was Drew Gulak.
I didn't know he called Gulak out.
Yeah, because there was an Evolve show that Cody worked, and I think he brought like pizza and stuff for the fan. Gulak had a little pissy bitch fit about it, and Cody kind of ran him down about it.
Hey Shad, have you ever seen, back when he was on like Twitter, did you ever see the Eddie Kingston comment to Disco?
No.
Oh, Eddie Kingston commented on like some dumb shit that Disco posted, and Eddie Kingston responded, "You never did the work and the boys kept you around to laugh at you. I remember hearing the story where Big Show farted in your face. You ain't a man." And obviously you have to imagine like that in Eddie's voice saying that, but I can picture it. Like Eddie Kingston's a real one. I love Eddie Kingston.
Yeah, I love Eddie. In the same vein as Disco, this is somebody who actually did have a legacy, but in the same way it seems like he's been trying to find all kinds of ways to ruin it, is Bubba Ray Dudley. I mean, yeah, that eye roll. He keeps coming up with the consistently worst takes over and over and over again.
I will give him some credit. He does stick up for people appropriately, like when he should. Like when that angry vet that had never wrestled for more than 20 people like had that rant, like Bubba replied to him and said, "Well, I guess I'm a mark," and posted a picture of him with like Ric Flair.
It's one of those things where it kind of feels like, is it a broken clock thing, or is this just baseline?
I feel like he's that guy that'll have bad takes all day, but like when it comes to defending people in the business, I feel like he's probably the first guy that's going to have your back a lot of the time.
Okay, fair enough.
And he has my favorite gif where they are taking liberties with New Day and Big E just destroys him.
Oh yeah. He gave them a really nice receipt.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, he does stick up for people and stuff, and like there's some times where I think he like has good takes more about like there was one he had about AEW I thought was actually good, and I don't remember it now.
Maybe it's just more that
I think he was complaining like about they need to like, I think it was more about like giving more Eddie Kingston like but like I think he has a lot of bad takes, but like I don't he doesn't bother me as much because I feel like usually he's not like a total jerk, and he works with a lot of young guys, and it doesn't seem like he's like a bully or anything.
Maybe it's more that his bad takes are just remarkably bad.
Oh yeah, they are. He's
okay. Maybe that's what it is.
Do we have any other juicy ones? He does. He's obnoxious with his takes. Like, I'll admit.
I mean, one of the big fish, and I don't think we did this, but one of the big fish is Hogan.
Oh yeah.
Because
his lies, because there's people that do like YouTube videos on his lies. He just did Rogan, which I think had more. The only thing I think he's done reasonable lately is where he did like the dueling promos with the little kid, which I thought was cute.
And that's like 10 years old.
I think the Hogan knows best thing was bleh. That kind of was a tank on his legacy. I will give him credit. He did destroy what the fuck was Gawker. he gets some points for getting Gawker. And he does have one of my favorite memes, which is totally inappropriate, but the memes of him destroying the 2 towers.
That was talked about on Opie and Anthony, since I mentioned. Yeah.
But I mean, he gets, but I mean, his line I think hurts. He's kind of been doing the media rounds, which I think hurts because then you get a whole new round of things. Like, I don't even think his line's like entertaining anymore. And you kind of lose the bits, whatever bits of like insight he has, because he lies all the time.
He does. It is.
Yeah, he lies to the point where it's become almost like a meme. How much he lies, and it's just increased. It's some of it's actually comical, where it's like, yeah, dude, yeah, brother, I was gonna be like the lead guitarist from Metallica, brother. And it's like, really, Terry, come on, like, no,
that deserves calling him down by his full. Terrence, you stop lying right now, Terrence.
Yeah, I don't know. He has the good sense to go away for periods of time, so that helps.
So there was right after Wembley, he did an interview. He was like, "No, I was at Wembley and I met a Make-A-Wish kid and I went out and did my match in the ring, and when he passed away before I came back." And it's like, dude, you never wrestled at Wembley, ever. Just stuff like that is. Look, I can look at Hogan and appreciate that he is an excellent worker, very good in the ring. I mean, and we've gone into why. But dude, shut up. I cannot believe a word you say anymore. I don't care how true one nugget in the whole thing might be. It's just buried in so much crap that I just don't believe any of it.
Oh, I have one. I forgot to put on my list. So, I would say this is more of a lolcow meme guy, but Jesse Ventura, especially like with the conspiracy theory stuff. And that god awful made for TV movie when he was like the governor of Minnesota, that like directly lifted like the Bret Hart story, like he was involved with that.
The whole thing about the weirdest, most indulgent made for TV biography movie.
Yeah, and the guy was wrong anyway because he didn't want a job on his last night in the company, which I think you pointed out on a way back in the past episode. But like, I think when people make jokes about him now, it's like mind control. Because he did that conspiracy theory show on some like off-brand channel, but that's kind of
he was on like History Channel or something like that.
Discovery, History or major channel. Yeah.
Because like when I think of Ventura now, I think of like, oh, he's like one of those 9/11 truther guys that like still won't let that go.
It's unfortunate because I feel like Jesse he's probably like number 2 in my opinion of like color commentator. He was phenomenal. No, my number 1 obviously is like Bobby Heenan. I love Bobby Heenan, but can I go back to Hogan really quickly?
Yeah.
I thought about this recently because we're talking about we were discussing like what to discuss on the show, and man, I feel bad because like part of me, there is a part of me, and I started watching in like the latter half of '92, so this was after like the 80s heyday of Hulkamania, but I've also said that I once I got into wrestling, I basically had my mom over the course of like 92, 93, like go to Blockbuster or whatever the local video store was, and I would just watch like all the old like Coliseum home video stuff. So I watched like most of the WrestleManias up until like the early '90s. So I've watched like most of the WrestleManias, SummerSlams, and Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble, and all that stuff. I watched all that stuff. So I became a Hulkamaniac watching the stuff like after the fact, even though that was a few years after the '80s Hulkamania boom. And a part of me is still always like, there's a part of me that I'm in my heart like a Hulkamanian. I'm like in my 40s now, and like, but I'm still like a Hulkamaniac. So I still in my heart appreciate, the character Hulkamania, train, say your prayers, take your vitamins. But the real man of Terry Bollea is obviously very problematic. Seems to be some level of racist. Back in the day, we talked about on the show, one of the earlier episodes of the show, which people should listen to our
Oh, the
show from the very beginning
apology.
all the way through. He gave an apology. When they were bringing him back to the WWE, he gave an apology to the locker room, including like the New Day and everything, and like people like Booker T and everything like that. And it was one of those non-apology apologies where it's like, you tell people, it's like, well, I'm sorry you got offended. And it's like, that's not an apology. Like, you're just acknowledging people who are upset with what you said without you actually taking responsibility for what you said and being like, oh, this is wrong of me. You're just like, well, it's like if I like say, Shad, you're a real piece of shit. And I tell everyone, like, yeah, Shad, he's a real piece of shit. And then you come to me and it's like, that's bad. And it's like, well, I'm sorry you got upset about that. I'm sorry you're offended. It's like, I didn't say like, I was wrong for saying that. I'm saying like, oh, I'm sorry that you're upset. You took it the wrong way.
So
it's like, how are you not going to take that?
Yeah,
like
a
you
team
said,
of
like, I don't. In Hogan's case, sorry to cut you off, Chad.
Yeah,
Hogan was like, yeah, I don't want my daughter dating an N-word. It's like, that's a tough one to walk back for, but you could be like, guys, I'm older, I was raised a certain way, it's wrong.
I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong.
I shouldn't have said that. I'm getting educated. I'm trying to be a better person. And then go to the African American talent of WWE and be like, guys, what I said was really hurtful. And I don't know if I can make it up to you guys, but I'm trying. And people might be like,
would you be willing to help me be better about this?
Yeah. And I'll make a comparison. Like, it obviously very negatively affected their careers. And unfortunately, they never got the level they should have because of this. But the Briscoes, Jay Briscoe made comments way back in the day that were very negative and disparaging towards gay people. And he got a lot of heat for that. That essentially cost him, that cost the Briscoes getting picked up by the WWE.
Yeah.
They eventually got, when Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor, like he obviously brought them, and they had like that year-long amazing. Yeah, the network executives would not let them on to AEW, but they would have obviously come, if he could have, he would have brought them on to AEW proper. But they had that amazing feud with FTR, probably like the best feud of that year, 2022, probably the best feud of the year. Like, it was amazing, great matches.
I think that won our feud of the year.
Yeah, and then unfortunately Jay died tragically, and they never let, like, in death, like, he got some sort of redemption, like the executives let it go. But
I think the executive in question wasn't there anymore too.
Well, and I mean, I think I tend to buy I think Effie going to bat for them was a big deal, because like we've seen typically from him, he's not he doesn't just like he told the NWA to screw off. So someone in the chat said, Mark said, "Don't bring that around his girls." I don't remember that one, but I only remember the Jay stuff.
That would have been Jay, not Mark. Pretty sure.
Mark might have said something though. I just thought I'd mention it.
That's not the one that stirred up the.
No, but they might have dug that up in the around, because I thought it was the Jay thing. I thought it was specifically a Jay thing at the time that like caused it.
Yeah, it was from years ago, but I bring Jay up to be the point where that obviously caused a lot of problems for them.
Yeah, and rightfully so at the time.
Yes, but by all metrics, by all discussion from people who it actually would matter very much to, he did change. Like he made an effort to educate himself. He made an effort to make amends to the people that he hurt. And individuals who are, LGBTQ, who have worked in the industry, who have worked, like have said after the fact, it's like, he was nothing but nice to me. He was actually really polite to me. He understands like the hurt that he caused, and he changed and is trying to change and be a better person. And people had glowing things to say. Like you mentioned Effie. Like Effie was one who said, like I worked with him. I worked with him on shows. Always, like, he was a great guy to me, very polite. And it's not fake. It's not like, oh, I need to be nice to you.
Yeah, because he told the NWA to go fuck themselves when they were trying to repair their image in the fall. He was like, nope.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me, but Effie seems to be very stingy with those kinds of endorsements.
He's
I think he wasn't.
I think he's just just I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say, like, I think he has like his I don't know if moral or like ethical approach to things is like I don't think he's the kind of guy that says something if he doesn't mean it, is the general impression I've got from him.
Yeah, he's real. He's not going to shine one on, because necessarily he's doing it to benefit himself, which that's bold, because you may take a position that doesn't help you and maybe it disadvantages you, but you're still being honest and true to yourself. But people like Effie and other people in the LGBTQ community said, like, I worked with Jay and he changed, like, and it wasn't just like, I'm trying to rehab my image. He like genuine. It's like, I said these awful things and I shouldn't have, but I'm going to treat you like a human being.
Well, I think they had,
and it's like that back to Hogan.
I was going to say,
yeah, go ahead.
I think with them at the time too is they really had no path to any big league because of their past behaviors. So they really had no incentive to put on those like airs, because I think in their mind they were toast as far as like ever getting above like Ring of Honor. So I would tend to think that would make it more genuine, because like why pretend at that point if you're not getting anywhere?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, they could have been, but like I tend to think, like the stuff I've seen from Mark, too, seemed pretty sincere.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
To cycle it back to Hogan, though, it's like I don't know that Hogan's ever been really like that, genuinely apologetic.
Hogan's like a politician. Like he's always like it's always about him.
And Hogan, much like Flair is going to be how Flair is, Hogan's going to be how he is. Like he's the big thing like this year. I don't know if you saw it, but he's like, born again. He got like baptized. He did an appearance on the.
Yeah, he was on the 700 Club.
He was on the 700 Club, which is a infamous American-based like.
I have a long-standing grudge with the 700 Club, like a very long-standing grudge. They have never apologized for robbing me of Mr. Belvedere reruns as a child. Because if you don't have it, like this is kind of a relic of the past if you're younger. So it wasn't on TV every day, like they would buy time, so it would not be on every day. So if you were say me and you're between the ages like 8 and 14 and you had like a show that was on a certain time, you might get interrupted 2 or 3 times a week with the 700 Club instead of, Mr. Belvedere reruns.
So, yeah, Pat Robertson, frankly, is an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment to people who were purported to be of the same faith as him. And I cannot, if he's going like, oh, we're saying that, that Hogan's going to be on the 700 Club, my grifter alarm is going off.
Yeah, which really sucks because Focus on the Family did produce like one of what I think is one of the greatest children's programs of all time, which is Adventures in Odyssey.
I have no info on that at all.
It's a children's radio program that has run from like 85 to, I think it's still going. Like they've had Hal Morris was a character on it. The guy that plays Wacko's on it. All sorts of famous like voice actors have done like roles on it. So it's just like a children's program it's a decent little radio drama that they've put on for a long time.
I can't remember the guy's name, but the figurehead for Focus on the Family is also someone I do not have good.
No, I wouldn't have a good opinion on any of them.
But that's neither here nor there. So
it's one of those bad. They're the type of people you get when you mix religion and money a little too much.
It's any human endeavor is going to have people who want to exploit it, claw their way to the top. Yeah. It does not matter what it is. It just specifically pisses me off whenever it's in entities it should not. It by definition should not be in. But of course they're going to be there too.
We should have watched the 700 Club thing. There might have been some lulls in there.
I wouldn't have done it.
I bring that up because someone noted this. That I guess on Hogan's like website.
He has a website.
Really started to say, I guess so, but his I don't know if it's his website or like that store he owns like in Florida. Like he really started selling like Hogan / Hulkamania themed like religious things where it's like sign of the cross.
I thought you were about to say
something like that. Well, no, it's like Hulkamania sign of the cross or something like that, and it's like, oh my God, Hogan, you found a new grift. You've had a new grift too.
Gotta get that money, brother.
And it's like, wow.
He's just.
Yeah, but it makes again like a part of me is still like I'm a Hulkamaniac brother. Like I love the character of Hulk Hogan, but the real man is problematic.
I can appreciate the skill, but I detest the person.
Like I tend to just roll my eyes at his antics and move on with my life, like whereas Flair like actively bothers me. But I don't think Hogan's like as in my face as like Flair is. Like Flair is always like out there trying to like I think Flair would like do. I mean, pretty much Flair's just all about the money. Like Hogan, like I said, at least disappears for periods of time, but there's someone else that's been like on the tip of my tongue. Rick Steiner.
Yes.
Rick Steiner. So
having that outburst at that convention,
Giselle Shaw,
and it was
what?
Is it just? Okay, hold on. I'm gonna get it right. Giselle Shaw. Was that who?
Giselle Shaw.
Was that
Steiner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it just was so confusing because it's like
he didn't even know her.
He didn't know her, and it just seemed like all like because she's trans. But I mean, I guess I don't know if we've entirely heard his story, but I don't know if there's much to his story.
I mean,
that's really different. But it just seems like they were at like a convention or an event, and he just started like lashing out, ranting at her from.
She's never really
from this perspective.
She's walking past him and he just started screaming at her.
Yeah, she's never said much about it. Like they had to like drag the bit we know out of her.
Well, someone got video of him doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
And
part.
so
it doesn't make sense to me, because even if you're taking like an anti-trans type of perspective,
Someone got him wound up. That's what I think happened.
I guess, but it's also like, what do you want specifically with Giselle Shaw? Like, Giselle Shaw is trans, but is a trans female and lives life as a trans female, and
like, but
they work in the women's division. Like,
well, but like where I think
what
it's
do you
dumb,
want?
where I think it's dumb from like a business person's perspective of you're going to cons and selling autographs and stuff. Like Giselle Shaw is a literal, I mean, not literal, but she's practically a nobody in wrestling, and you threw away like years of con money just to be a dick for like 2 minutes. Like that's where I think that, I mean, it's stupid on a business end, but again, like who gives a shit? Like she wasn't bothering you. Like you didn't even know who she was.
What's the point of it?
Yeah.
It was such a distasteful thing to do. That's why it took the Steiners out of my favorite tag team of all time. It's like, I can't support people who are behaving.
I mean,
Scott.
I guess from a work perspective, they're still up there, but it's
Scott's
also like,
never, to my knowledge,
just
done
so
anything
detestable
like
to me.
that. And Scott seems like he's been pretty chill in his old age. But like, I'm not gonna, like, again, we said this about Jericho's wife. I'm not gonna throw Scott under the bus just because his brother is an asshole. And like Scott's worked more like recently than Rick has, so I think Scott's been more exposed to it, and I've never heard of him doing anything like that. Like he might share those opinions and just might be smart enough to keep his mouth shut, but like, because even like I think I don't know, I think someone got Rick wound up about it. I'd be interested to see who that was, if like based on my theory about it, because they should get some heat too. But like it was so bizarre. It was just such a weird like line in the sand. But like I don't hold Scott really to that, because Scott seems like he's like self-aware and kind of in on the joke now. And it was really funny when he worked King of Trios, because they had a swear jar for him for the weekend.
I just
and his back and forth with Jordan Grace is like adorable.
It's just the fact that what Rick did just repulsed me so much.
No, it was great. There was like you said, there was something particularly gross about what he did.
It was a loud, blatant, in public attempt at shaming and degrading somebody. And I'm not going to go hyperbolic on it, but it was this attempt to do this huge big thing to harass and embarrass somebody in public that he didn't know. And it's like, the idea of doing that to me is so alien. Like, if I'm going to be that angry at someone, if I'm going to be that pissed off at somebody, this is going to be personal as hell. Like, the kind of people that I would be that angry at are the kind of people that have said untoward and threatening things to, like, my family. And at that point, it's like, all right, okay, gloves are off, but this isn't somebody who did anything to you. And you make this huge spectacle out of it to be a dick.
Yeah.
It just seems very unhinged.
Yeah. It's like, what did you gain from that? That's what I don't get. Now, I do have another one. This is mostly for me in ring, but do you think Undertaker hurt himself with like those last couple of years where he kept trying to like, I think the problem he had at the end of his career is he kept coming back because he was trying to like go out on a not shitty match. So he kept like trying, and like, 'cause he had that really bad match with Goldberg. There was
he had, if you recall, he had the really god awful tag match where it was him and Kane versus D-Generation X of Michaels and Triple H, with that Triple H like tore his like, and then wrestled another like 15-20 minutes, and it's like, why, for like, it was like a stupid like 20-30 minute match or something, and it's like, why, like, this is awful, like, stop. but that was for like, to me, like that was like grifting for the money. I guess that grifting is not the right word, but it's like you're just doing this for the paycheck. Where it's,
I mean, he's like
I would
Krusty
say
the-
yes. Like he physically, I mean, for the last like 2-3 years of his career was like
really
not.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. You're barely mobile. Like
If you
you can't go.
if you confronted Undertaker, it'd be like Krusty. He's like, oh my god, it was awful. They pulled up to my house with a dump truck full of money. I'm not made of stone.
Yeah.
I think he just was trying to like go out on a good one, and like I think he just didn't have the wherewithal to realize it was over, because like, I mean, he'd been bad for a while, but like it was forgivable. But like, remember the Goldberg match? He dropped Goldberg right on his head.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember somehow
After Goldberg did that too.
But like, remember somehow Goldberg took all of the blame for that match, even though he was concussed for like half of it.
The thing that stuck out in my memory for Undertaker is that last big match that he had with Roman that was supposed to be the big pass the torch. That I did not watch Roman Reigns defeat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. What I watched, to me, is I watched Roman Reigns beat up an old man in the ring. That was my takeaway from that. And it was hard to watch and embarrassing, and I was like, God, I felt, I didn't feel heat. I just felt bad for watching. And man, it's rough. Because this was a guy who had consistently pulled out really good stuff with people, and just to see things. Yeah, okay, his retirement match was that cinematic with AJ Styles. Okay.
That doesn't count.
It doesn't, because you have enough camera trickery to hide things and that sort of stuff. It's like, is that a good enough thing to go out on?
Nah,
sure.
I mean,
But
yeah, I could see from his perspective, like, I don't know, you're in the ring and stuff. Like, I could see there's like probably an aspect of that for like someone that's done it for so long. Like, that doesn't quite wet the whistle the same way like being in the ring does.
Probably. Well, I mean, if you want to go out on a thing, that's a decent enough thing to go out on. But man, it was just to see that dramatic drop. It's like it's one of those. It looks like hanging on too long.
Yeah, he's been. Is he the worst case we've seen of that? As far as like the modern era, not something from like the 80s or 90s, but would he be the worst case of hanging? Well, there was the Viano Tricero Triple Mania, where he obviously should not have been in the ring because he had like a stroke recently, but we won't.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Ric Flair in his last match. It's like,
yeah,
but that's I guess it's not really comparable, because it's like Ric's like over 70. Like, you should not be doing this.
I think it would be fair to say it's the most widely visible example.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this with any relish. I didn't want to see this happen. I didn't want to see a legendary gimmick go like that, but it happened anyway.
I just looked it up. I saw this happened like last year or two. You guys, or Brad, are you aware of Chick Donovan?
Yeah, cheeky.
Yeah. Dude is literally 77 years old, and I've seen him have a match in the last year or two. He was actually champion of some like indie promotion, and the match was basically like, he didn't even take any bumps. It was like the dude like the match, before the match went out to the outside or something, and they just like kind of brawled outside. Like, Chicken, I don't even think took a bump. Dude in his 70s, and it was still like not as embarrassing as some of this Undertaker stuff.
I mean, Mike Jackson still pops up here and there.
Mike Jackson is like another freak of nature that he actually is oddly like athletic for a 70-something-year-old man, but like he can do a good bit. He can walk the ropes and stuff like that. And it's like you should not be able to do this as a 7-year-old guy, but 70-something-year-old guy, like he's in his 70s. I think he's might be older than
right
Rick.
now.
I don't know.
He's 74, and his last match was May 4th
of this year.
Yeah, he's wrestled.
Okay, that's.
Let me see.
They're like 2 weeks ago. Like.
Oh, he's wrestled for GCW this year. He wrestled.
Oh no, he's wrestled. Well,
he wrestled Kerry Morton.
I've seen him wrestle for GCW before. Oh, Kerry Morton. Okay.
He's wrestled. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times this year. So he's doing better than some NXT people. Now we have to talk about before we go for our last one tonight. We have to talk about the saddest of all the ruined their legacy. Randy the Ram Robinson.
Oh, that movie hurts to reflect on.
That was such a good that movie should have gotten an Oscar.
The movie was great, but I can't watch it again. That movie is entirely for me to be comfortable watching it again. You know,
him like screwing it all up at the end like really upset me. It's kind of like when you read the Shining book and you start getting upset at Jack because he's screwing up, like Randy did that. Like when he does all the coke and like does the lady in the bathroom, it's like, oh, I was so mad at him.
It's heartbreaking, and the worst part is all that happens, and I'm sitting there going, this is not just written in the script. Like, this is based off of people, this stuff. Like the heartbreaking line that before he screwed up when he says to his daughter, "I'm a broken down piece of meat and I'm alone and I deserve to be." I was just like, oh God.
Yeah.
I'm not even involved in this scene and that hurts. And then later in the movie when she says, he said, I'm alone and I just don't want you to hate me. And she said, I don't hate you. I don't care about you. I just don't want anything to do with you ever again. And I'm just like,
yeah, that's worse than her hating him.
Oh.
So what
and
is...
of course it got beat out by Sean Penn.
Ugh. What's your interpretation? Do you think he died at the end?
Yeah.
I tend to go with he died.
I think the best answer I feel like is I hope he.
You hope what?
I hope that he, because that's the only way that he gets any remote kind of good end is going out and doing what he loves. Otherwise, he has torpedoed everything to... I mean, I watched the movie and basically take it as, yeah, that was it. The fact that we never see anything...
Doesn't...
Yeah, but yeah, otherwise he's ruined his life even more.
To make like $500 probably for that show.
For something so fleeting.
Which is sad. If he had just held on for another couple years, he'd be on like the convention circuit, like dragging it all in. Probably be happy.
Yeah.
So this one was a bit of a negative episode. Next week, we are actually doing the exact opposite of this. So we're going to be doing next week, it's going to be wrestlers that salvage their legacy.
Or enhanced it.
Yeah. So we have quite the list for that. I think there'll be some interesting discussions around, like, I think Jake Roberts.
Oh, yeah. That one makes me happy.
Dusty.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about Jake more, I guess, next week, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested in that one. And then I think we got a request on Facebook for a 93 episode of Superstars on the network, so that's coming up. To commemorate its, is it the 30th anniversary, Shad? PCU?
Oh, yes. Hang on, let me double check.
And then we have a couple of clip shows coming up. We have Mulky Mania if I can get enough matches for that, just to have some
30
fun.
years.
And
30 years.
then we have Randy Savage in Memphis is also on the. Now that might be a two-parter. I might split that up into ICW footage and Memphis footage. I'll see about that one, because if we do ICW, I might try to weasel Tim on, because he loves ICW. But that's kind of like what's in the immediate future. We have a larger project that I just need to get off my lazy butt and start putting matches together.
I sent you guys a clip like yesterday, I think, where it was. I think it's like from it was back in the WWF. It was Savage being interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund, and it's like they're clearly trying to corpse each other. And it's like they start off, and Randy Savage is like to Gene Okerlund, it's like, your mustache is so crooked, and Gene like immediately responds with like, your beard's a little offsides itself. And it's like they just go into like the promo, the segment they're supposed to do, and it's like, y'all are clearly like trying to mess with each other, get each other to laugh before y'all went into like business.
Did you watch the one I sent you of him interviewing Greg Valentine? Because they're doing like promos in the back, and he brings like his wife up, and he's like, because Greg laughs like, so it's like, does he sit around the table like ranting about Tito Santana, like, pass the fucking potatoes, like in the. Those are always funny, because like because he like there's ones with him and Kamala that are always funny, because Kamala's like, I'm sorry, I don't speak English.
Yeah,
I think
Sugar Bear Harrison, like he actually Gene was great, like really underrated. I didn't appreciate Gene until like kind of after he was gone.
No, because
like that. But he was good, and I would love if you actually notice, you pay attention whenever he like, to avoid like laughing, because they have fun with him. He would like they'd poke fun with each other, but whenever like you see like he goes like this, like he puts his finger like to his lip and everything like that, and it just seems like, from if you're like watching it, you don't know what's happening. It's almost like he's being really pensive. He's thinking about things, but it's like that's his like tell to be like, I'm not gonna laugh.
What?
But they would mess with them. There's like a recent like WCW like early 90s WCW clip when like Orndorff had come in and JYD is there. So this must have been like 91, 92 or something like that, I feel. And like JYD wanders. Gene is doing promo segments with the guy. Well, actually, maybe it's like WWF. I forget where it's from, but it's like they're doing like segments, and Orndorff is supposed to be doing it, and JYD wanders into the shot, and Orndorff like plays it off like a pro. But they like ad lib some shit with JYD, and it's hilarious. And Gene is just like playing along, and he's just like.
Well, I think what people don't appreciate about him, and you have to watch like the TV and get like the local promos, but it's like his relationship with each individual wrestler is like what really sets him apart, because every like wrestler in every promo, there's like a dynamic he has with each one that's different, that like other people have never like recreated. And like the other thing that's funny about him is like he's a dirty old man, and like it comes through in like the interviews, because remember that one we watched, I think it was SummerSlam '89, and like Sherry Martel had like some like buttless thing on, and like the whole interview he's just like looking at her ass. But there's like this one with Don Morocco from like, I think, Championship Wrestling. And, you know, Morocco's talking about something, and he's like talking about how the women in Hawaii are like chubby, and Gene's like, are they really chubby? And like he just has this look on his face. I need to find the episode for it, but just stuff like that. And like I don't know, there's one with like Wendy Richter, where she says something like, I'm not going to let someone lay on top of me for like the 1, 2, 3. It goes back to Gene, and he just loses his shit. Because it's like she said something like vaguely sexual, and he just lost his mind. But the other thing I love about him is if you watch shoots about him, like he's an animal. Like I think Nash talks about like how he loved hanging out with Gene, but like just Gene was a total like animal, like when it came to drinking, and he would just drink them all under the table.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think he was talking about the Hall of Fame, and they just like drank for like forever. And he's like, yeah, it was like one of those ones where you like get home and you realize like you way overdid it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sad when Mean Gene passed. He was like a one of a kind.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I think that'll wrap it for this episode. Thank you for being with us, whether in person, or you're listening later, whatever. Thank you for being with us. This is Shad with Matt and Brad. We've been in 3 Corners. You're in the 4th, and we'll